Hello, YouTubers. How are you today? Well, I'm glad you're joining me, and I hope that you're really interested and get something out of the upcoming video. My 15-year-old grandson and I are going to build a mini ITX PC. So the parts have been arriving over the last few days, and I actually have a commitment to have this done in 6 days. So I'm about to take the next step with you guys and show you the parts that have arrived so far and see how close we are to actually beginning our build and getting going. I think the last part is going to be the graphics card, but we'll see. And I'll talk to you a little bit about price. My goal was under 100. I'm sorry. The goal is under $1,000 for this. It's intended to be a fairly powerful PC that allows me to do videos, a lot of editing, uploads, downloads, graphics, etc. So it's going to need to have some oomph to it. And the other thing is I want it small enough that I can bring it back and forth to 2 other locations that I travel typically to and connect it and use it there. So let's see what we got. Next step, I'm going to take you and show you what parts have arrived so far. And we're getting close to beginning the actual build. All right, everyone, let me take you through some of the parts that have already arrived. Let me start with the case. This is it. This is my new ITX PC case. You could see I wanted it small, and small it is. And we'll be taking it apart because we have to fit a lot of stuff in it. And I don't think that's going to be all that easy. That'll be the biggest problem, by the way, is just in the build, trying to figure out how to maneuver and put everything into it. And the other thing is I will mention they fit so much in such a small space. There is a USB-C, a USB-A input here on the case. That's nice. And there's also a microphone and speaker jack on the case. By the way, very light. It's silver, as you can see. And I got this, just arrived. And it is the Leon and Dan. And I'll talk more about the case as we actually use it. But there it is. So we have the case. I got, for storage, we have a terabyte. And I got the 980 Samsung Pro. So it's a nice solid state drive. I've used these Samsung drives before, and I am very happy with them. So we have that. I have gotten 32 gigabytes of memory, of RAM, and for that I have a Corsair. I did go with DDR4, though I could have done a little bit better if I wanted to. But anyway, it's a Vengeance Pro, and it's an RGB, so there'll be a little bit of light that comes with it. So Corsair, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Next, the brains. And the brains in this case, for the first time, I've gotten a Ryzen 7. I've never gone above 5 before, so I have a 7. And it's the Ryzen 7 3800X CPU. And I had just built a large desktop with a Ryzen 5. I really like it. It's very fast. It's just great. It does everything I need it to do. So I'm happy with it. So I had toyed with going Intel, but we're going to go ahead and do a Ryzen. And by the way, as you order, and if you're going to build a product, the thing is to make sure that everything works together. So of course, an AMD motherboard is not going to work with a Intel processor and vice versa. So I took a lot of time in trying to figure out what would work, what would fit in there, etc. So I hope you're following along with me. Next up is the motherboard. And this time, and it's a first for me again, I got a Gigabyte or Gigabit motherboard. I have an A520i, and this is designed for my Mini ITX case. And also, it says on the front, AMD Ryzen 5000 desktop ready. So it is ready for it, and you'll see it as we get it set up. It has both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so now I don't have to worry about Ethernet cables or anything else like that, which I've had to in the past. Again, another step up for us. And last for today, because as I said, I'm still waiting for some stuff, I decided to get a powerful power supply. Tough to say powerful power supply, but I did. And so I have a 650 watt power supply. And this is from Silverstone. And as best I could tell in trying to fit everything into my Mini ITX box, this will work just fine. And the cable management, I also think, will work just fine. So excited to have all these. Now, doesn't it look funny if you could see all of this, you kind of wonder, how is this stuff going to fit in that? But it is, and still, as I said, the graphics card at least is on the way with another couple of minor things, and I have to go see if I have thermal paste. Almost all the parts came from Amazon. Several of them came from Walmart, but this is primarily Amazon. In the past, it's always been Newegg, but this time I found it more competitive on Amazon. So here's where we are today. And tomorrow will be day one of my 6-day build. So see you then. After giving a lot of consideration, I have now decided that I'm going to put an air cooler in, which is going to go in here. So I have just ordered a Cooler Master air cooler, and I will be putting that in. It'll have 2 fans with it, and I feel more comfortable doing that in the case, especially since I'm using a Ryzen 7 at this point. So I have taken the case completely apart, by the way, and now prepared to begin the build. So here we go. All right, our first step is we are going to put the Ryzen CPU into the motherboard. The motherboard, if you remember, is a Gigabit A520i AC, and the AC simply tells you that we have Wi-Fi built into it. So here we go. You just have to gently lower the CPU in, and once it's in, if you go like that, a little bit back and forth, you could double check that it's physically in there. And then we're going to lower this lever to lock it in, and it is locked. So we have already put the CPU into the motherboard. You got it. Yep. So here we go. So first step is we're now going to put in the SSD. So we have a 1 terabyte Samsung SSD, and it's the 980 Pro. And it's going to go here. And so the first step is to unscrew the screw that's sitting there. And he's using an iFixit kit, which is magnetic, so the screw will stay on there. And now we're going to go ahead and install the SSD, and it can only go in one way. And then once you get it lined up, you push it in like that. Now we're going to press it down and going to screw it in. And we could use the magnetic screwdriver. And it looks like this is going to be perfect. And perfecto, it's in. One thing I'm going to mention that's a little bit unusual, there is no heat sink that goes on top of the SSD. Most of them do have a heat sink. So this Gigabyte motherboard does not have that. But I think it's going to be all right based on the cooling that we're going to have inside the case. All right, now it's time for the memory. And we have our Corsair Vengeance. And it's RGB, so it'll have some lights to it. We have two 16 gigabyte pieces of memory sticks that we're going to put in. And so what he's already done is he's opened up the clips on either side here. And now we're going to put in the first stick. And you can only put it in one way. And then you go on either side, push it down, and you can hear it click when it closes. And it's in. And we'll put in the second stick, and now we'll have 32 gigabytes of memory. Well, we're now going to get a little bit more complex. We have a all-in-one cooler, an air cooler that we've purchased for this. We were not going to do that. We were just going to use fans. But once I went to Ryzen 7, I decided to go ahead and to use an air cooler. So there's going to be fans and a radiator. It cannot be any higher than 55 millimeters. Our measurement says that this is 54 point something milliliters. We only had 7/100ths of an inch space left. So here we go. We're going to put this together now. Our next step is we're going to begin to assemble this. We're going to take the fans, put it onto the radiator here, and we have lots and lots of other parts that we're going to use before we go ahead and attach this to the CPU. So here we go. So we're just completing the installation of the two fans, the RGB fans. And as you can see, the way we have it facing, we have the words Cooler Master facing towards the radiator. And we'll be testing it in a second just to make sure the height's okay, but it should be. Well, here's where we are. We did get the cooler in. It appears to fit up here. And now you see the beginning of the spaghetti that we have everywhere. So the next step is going to be, we're going to put the motherboard in here. And this is the riser cable. So we'll put the motherboard in next and begin some connections, but that'll take a little while. Well, let's see where we are. Here's the motherboard. It's not installed yet, but we sat it in there to make sure that everything fit. And it looks like everything is going to fit. We put the brackets on for the AMD connector. And we found the power source on the motherboard. Now, the power on the motherboard for the CPU cooler is 4 pins, but we only had 3 pins. And what that means is that the fan is always going to run at the same speed. That's okay. So we're okay with that. So we're going to now just set up these fans, and then we're going to put the motherboard. Don't forget to put your plate in if you had a individual plate. So put your plate in, and then we'll go ahead and we'll fasten the motherboard. We'll then put the cooler onto our Ryzen CPU, and then we'll continue to make sure we have everything we can connected, and then we'll put in the power supply. All right, we have all of our cables here, motherboard, CPU cooler. So the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to screw the motherboard into the case. Now the case came with 4 screws for the motherboard that were built in. I'll move the cooler out of the way. So the flat ones, there's There's like flat ones in there, I think. All right, so the motherboard is screwed in. We went with the bigger screws. The screws are not well marked. You can't see them very well on here. You can't see the difference very well. So we believe we put the right screws in to hold the motherboard in place. Now we're going to put the cooler on here. Well, here's where we are. We got the motherboard in. The cooler is on. This took a bit of work, by the way, the cooler. So I would just tell you that. And the hoses just barely fit on the side here where the memory is. So you have to be very careful when you buy memory for this case. Now we're going to connect. Well, hello there. We're going to take a time out. I have everything put together in here, except I don't yet have my graphics card, and the Ryzen processor is not integrated graphics, so I can't quite hook it up yet to a monitor. But does it work? So what I'm going to do before I go any further is I did put the power supply back in. I did get the cables adjusted as best I could. So I'm going to plug it in. And so I'm going to plug it in. I have. And the on-off switch is here. And I'm going to press it. And we got power. And I don't have the fans on the top lit up. So there they go. So the RGB on the top has lit. And let me see. Yep, the CPU cooler is lit. I'm not sure if it's working. Of course, the CPU is not hot yet. So I'm not sure if it's working, but everything is running as best I can tell. I will mention this connector from the Lian Li case is for my USB-C connector. It does not have a place to go on my Gigabit motherboard. Now, there is an adapter I believe I could find, but I'm going to bypass that for now. I do have a lot of connections on the back I can use, though none are USB-C. So that's an issue. And I'll talk to you a little bit about what I found as I was trying to put all these cables together. It's really hard. It took hours. But I'll tell you about all that in some sort of summary in just a bit. We're going to put the covers on, and I'm going to let you see it actually boot up into Windows. Let me shut it off. So it has worked, and now I'm going to work on cable management. There's work to be done. So far, it looks like it's going to work. We're almost there. So you can see the case. I have one panel on is all, and I actually have it upside down. Using an old card I had, an old video card, I'm able to get onto the screen here and do just a little bit of work in preparation for the final steps. The final steps are I'll put in the video card when it arrives in 3 days, and I'll put on the operating system. So anyway, I'll show you it's starting up here, and you could see the space there for the card. So we'll turn it on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug it in and turn it on. Here we go. So here is the turn on, and you can see the memory lights come on. The fans are on the bottom here, so you won't see those, but well, maybe you can see it lighting up. The fans are on, and here's the cooler, and you can see the cooler is at least lit up. And so it's looking, unfortunately, it was looking for my drive, and my drive is not yet set up, as you would expect. And I'm going to boot it into the BIOS, and there we go. There's the easy mode, and you can see some of the information here. It does show my 32 gigabytes of RAM. It shows the 1 terabyte SSD that I have installed, and I have TMP enabled on it, so I can put Windows 11 in. You can see the temperature of the CPU and the system temperature, and there's not much else there. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and set up Wi-Fi. So I'll do that. You can see the fan speed, by the way. So that's the easy mode. And then there is an advanced mode that gives you much, much more. And I will be using that because I'll have to boot into a USB drive soon in order to install my Windows 11. So it works so far. And I'll soon have my much, much, much better graphics card. Well, I'm at my next step now, and my next step is I am in the process of installing Windows on the computer. I'm putting on Windows Professional 11. I downloaded the media to a USB drive. I plugged the USB in, and fortunately the computer booted into that. It's now installing an update. I put in my Windows key, and right now all is going well. By the way, the machine is extremely quiet so far. So I'm going to go ahead and install Windows, do the updates on the drivers and any other software, along with my motherboard, and get the Wi-Fi working. I'll show you that. And once I do all of that, I am still waiting for my video card versus the one I'm using now that's not very good. So keep watching. All right, the last hardware step we're going to do is we're going to install this GeForce RTX from MSI, the Ventus 2X, 6 gigabytes into the machine. So here we go. So the first thing we'll take, we're going to move this for just a second. We're going to take out the temporary card we put in right here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to pull that straight out, up. It's going to come out of there.
Like that?
Perfect. And so it's out. So that's the end of this card. We're now going to go ahead and open our GeForce RTX and let you see what that looks like. Here it is in all its glory. So let me compare it with what was in there, and you'll see the big difference. You can see there's a sizable difference between the new card and the old one. This is a 8-pin card, and our power supply will handle that. So before we put it in, these here, this particular area here is an interesting area. It's called the riser cable. And what that means is we're going to plug down here the card in, and it's going to rise to meet the pins for the motherboard on the very top. So this is a riser cable. You don't see this in typically in large computers, but you will here. So let's move that out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this in, and then we're going to secure it. So the first step is to find the, well, we have new news. There is no power connector on the card. So we took the cable out, the PCI power cable from the power supply out, and it looks like the motherboard will power the card. So we've taken our side holders out, and we're about to go ahead and put the card in. So here we go. So we're just going to snap the card in here. All right, the moment of truth is here. The computer is built, and there it is in all its wondrous glory. It is hooked up, and we are now going to turn it on, and you can watch the screen. Here we go. Okay, here we go. I see lights. Let's see if the screen has come on. It's preparing an automatic repair, and I think it's just because we put the graphics card in, but we'll find out in a moment. It's diagnosing the PC, and again, I'm suspecting it's because it notices we've changed the graphics card. The Ryzen CPU we use does not have integrated graphics, so it will only work off of the, it's in Windows. So we're going to download the drivers, and you could see, I don't know if you could see, but if you look, you'll see it's elongated, and it's because it doesn't yet recognize the graphics card. So we'll be back to you after we get the graphics card all properly done. Well, let's start the computer up here before I give you a summary and a final price check. So you'll see on the screen here, start. You can take a peek and see how quick it starts up. So I've turned the button on for the power. One thing I didn't forget is that when you put it in sleep mode, if you have an RGB, memory sticks, they stay on, of course, unless you set them to black. So we are already up and running. So here we go. Let's see here. I'll see if I can show you a few things. What I did is I took what I'm calling the components. So this app will be from the Gigabit board, and it's their apps. So under BIOS information, it tells me my memory type, memory size, BIOS edition, version, etc. So here we have Easy Tune, and this is gives me the information I'm interested in. There's down here in the bottom, you could see the latest BIOS F21D, and that is the latest. I flashed. Updated it. Here's my Ryzen 7 processor, and you could see the processor speed. Unknown is here's the memory, and the my GeForce RTX 3050, which is the newest edition. And when I go over here and click there, it tells me a few things of interest, mainly the temperatures. You can see in there we're at 39 degrees Celsius, or maybe you can't see it, I don't know, but anyway, we're at 39 degrees Celsius, 37. The cooler works like a charm so far. I mean, when I overused it with a lot of video editing and things like that, and it was just fine. It would get up to 57, 58 Celsius, and then come back down. And I'm assuming it's because the cooler turned on a little bit higher. So works fine. Everything is good. I'm pleased with where we are here. I'm hoping that you guys were able to see how quickly it booted up. And I have my microphone on. I'm going to move it over by the let me go over by the computer. And you can hardly hear any noise. So I'm really, really pleased with that. So there we go. We are done with our computer build. I've actually synchronized it with another desktop I have. Well, let's sum up. where we are, and then at the very end, we'll go ahead and take a look at the prices. Number one is cable management. This is the number one thing that I found with this mini ITX case. This is not easy. So from the very beginning, as you get your parts, especially your power supply, and you see all of your cables that you're going to be using, where they're going to go, etc., slowly and carefully just figure out where you're going to put all the cables. And especially when you get to the motherboard around both the CPU and the memory sticks, just keep in mind that you may have to route cables around them or under or wherever it happens to be. So cable management, big deal to do. Storage, get enough storage. I'm satisfied. I got one 1 terabyte stick and nothing else. I didn't put in any SSDs, drives using SATA. I didn't do any of that because on this particular computer, I don't really need as much. But storage isn't all that expensive in these days. So if you need to get a 2 terabyte or get another drive, I would do it. I would do it early on so you don't ever have to be sorry and try to add it later. When you are going to purchase, once you've made a decision that you're going to build a computer, take your time. Go ahead and figure out the prices, put a goal in place for yourself, and just make sure that you just take your time. Don't decide today you want to build it and tomorrow order the parts. You'll see the prices will change over time. Go to the top retailers that you can buy the parts from, and just take your time. As I said, I did learn during this that Amazon has become very price competitive for this kind of build versus previously I had bought everything through Newegg. So the three companies I pretty much used this time were Best Buy, Walmart, and Amazon. Though I did find that the embedded Wi-Fi in the motherboard, so far, everything I found is slower than I would have expected, even using the antenna. And in my case, I'm fairly close to my mesh point. So I'm still working on that. It's not tremendously slower, but it is 20% slower than my phone, for instance. So anyway, just a point. The graphics card. At the end of the day, I may have made a mistake on the graphics card. I wasn't trying to be cheap, but I think I was. And so I will find out over time because I do a lot of video editing, like for the YouTube channel. And I'm not sure yet. Early indications are fine. The card is performing really well, doing what I want. I don't see much lag, many other issues, but we'll see as time goes on. But of all things, I think if you are going to use a graphics card and you don't have integrated graphics, I do suggest that you take great care and time in ordering the graphics card. So the motherboard I purchased, I thought was a middle of the road priced motherboard. Doesn't have all the connections I need. It looks like it was difficult to find where all the connectors went because they weren't labeled properly. So it's another case of it might be an area, because it's so important, that you may want to spend a little bit more money on and make sure you get exactly what you need, exactly what. So I got my power supply, as you saw, and it was exactly what I needed. It was, the wattage was 650. It wasn't the watts so much as the size. it was a small size and modular. So I was able to only have to put in the cables I was going to use, none other. This was really nice. And from a cable management standpoint, you should definitely go with a modular power supply. And I bought the right one. So if you're building a mini ITX case computer, I highly recommend going with something like I purchased. The last two things are going to be just pretty obvious. One is the case. You have to be really careful on what case you decide to go with. I knew what I was getting myself in for when I purchased the Leon Lee and Dan. I knew that there was only a 55 millimeter ledge that I could fit my cooler in if I decided to go with a cooler. I knew where everything went inside. I looked at videos, I looked at the specs, did all kinds of measurements. So your case is your starting point, and it's really what everything is going to wrap around, whether it's your cable management or your graphics card or whatever it happens to be. So again, take much care with your case. Finally, find the right program or online site or whatever it happens to be to make sure all the parts fit. I used PC Picker, and so as I put them in, it would say to me, I'm sorry, these two are not going to work, or this is going to work, or et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be 100% certain that everything is compatible as you put this together. Now, am I happy I built this? Really, yes. This is a computer I'm going to take with me to another location from time to time. Then I could bring it back here and keep it updated. And it's very modern, it's very fast, it's very quiet, it's very powerful. I am really happy. I waited about a week to do this summary just to make sure I was really happy with it. And I really like it. So, and building it with my grandson was so much fun. Taking him through why did you do this? What does this do? How do these go together? I think I think he really enjoyed it. He said he did. And I really enjoyed spending time with him. So it's a thing that is a productivity tool for me, kind of helped me spend more time with my grandson. And it gave me a nice feeling of accomplishment. The price list for my mini ITX. And as you could see here, I did not make my $1,000 goal. It was just under $1,100 at $1,092. These are the hardware costs for it. I went back and I looked at all the parts, and frankly, I would have bought the same parts at the same prices about 10 days later. So I didn't see any chance for a big improvement here, but there you go. It was just over $1,000.